I'm scared of change, and change is scary. I'm 100% positive that all of you listening have experienced this feeling at least once in your lifetime. For me, I've experienced this multiple times, and no matter how much I try to convince myself that I can handle change, something else happens and sets me back to square one, having me question all over again if I can do this, if I can handle what life throws my way. The scariest part of change is that there is no manual on life. Just because a certain approach works for one person doesn't necessarily mean it will work for the rest of us. But there's something about talking stories and listening to different perspectives that has helped me put the puzzle pieces together in my life. And I want you to benefit too. I want to share with you something that can potentially help you tackle this fearful mindset that comes with uncertainty and change. Now, as I've been talking, you might have noticed this small, subtle tattoo on my left wrist. And if you take a closer look, you'll see that it's an eagle, which holds a lot of symbolism to me. I once heard this story about eagles, which really stuck with me, and I want to share it with you. An eagle in the wild can live for 20 to 30 years, some even 70 years. So what's different about those that live as long as 70 years is that they are willing to undergo a brutal process of change. Let me explain. As an eagle approaches 20 to 30 years, their beaks and talons become so long and disfigured that they can no longer hunt for prey. Essentially, they starve. The feathers on their wings also grow uncontrollably, becoming heavier and heavier until they can no longer fly. It is at this point when they begin to die, stagnant, complacent, accepting, unless they embrace change. See, change is scary, and change can even be painful. For the eagle, this change involves beating its beak again and again and again against the rock until it breaks. For the disfigured beak cannot reform to something better until it is first broken. Then the eagle must pluck out its feathers one by one until it's no longer weighed down. All of this pain for months in order to take its flight of rebirth and live for 30 more years. Now, for those bird lovers out there, you might be thinking, this man is crazy. None of that is true. And I have to admit, you're right. Unfortunately, this is not what actually happens in the wild. But the heart of that story rings true. When we don't embrace change, we grow stagnant, comfortable, and complacent. We settle for less and let life pass us by, and we let our potential waste away until the dream dies right in front of our eyes. But you know what? We have the power within us to keep hope alive, to constantly aspire to be better, to grow, to reach our potential and ultimately self-actualize. We have the power to free ourselves from the baggages in our lives that hold us back. We have the power to take our own flight of rebirth and keep the dream alive for however many years. Welcome to Now Do With Theo, the podcast where each week we dive deep into the power of stories to unlock our potential and to propel us to move forward. Through the lens of personal narratives, we explore the moments that challenge us, change us, and ultimately champion our growth. Because it's not just about the stories that we tell, it's also about the actions that we take. To commence season 1, I want to share a little bit about a recent change I experienced. This time last year, I was playing with the idea of moving out of my parents' house in Philly. To give you some context, I am an only child to Asian immigrant parents. So as you might imagine, moving out is pretty frowned upon in my family. While I acknowledged the immense privilege that I had living with my parents, aka no rent, food always on the table, and comfort, I was also feeling stagnant in my life. Family responsibilities were prioritized over my well-being, personal boundaries were tested, my passion projects fell to the wayside, and my self-confidence and sense of independence plummeted. I felt like that eagle with its disfigured beak and heavy feathers, accepting of a fate I didn't want, but felt that I couldn't really avoid. Suggesting to my parents that I wanted to move out felt too painful to handle. I had been met with resistance in the past, and I contemplated about just maintaining the peace, even at the expense of my happiness and my growth. But deep down, I yearned for independence, so much so that I decided to embrace the uncertainty of change. I made amends with moving out, with leaving the comfortable life of living with my parents for something much scarier. It was painful, but I wanted to fly again, and the only way there was through embracing the pain and change. That brings me here, on a chair in my apartment in Atlanta, talking to you. Now, you might be wondering, why should we even listen to this podcast? I'm here to tell you that I certainly haven't figured everything out. I can't tell you what to do, what changes you may need in your life, what pain you may face in the process. I don't even have a manual for living, but I may be able to give you some guidance and maybe even some direction. Change isn't going to ask you for permission, and change doesn't always get delivered to you on a silver platter. Sometimes you have to be the one to change your circumstances, to yearn for more and not settle for less. And most importantly, no matter how much we try to dodge change, we have to remember that change is the only thing that remains the same. And the more we embrace uncertainty, the more comfortable we will feel in accepting what we don't know. Through the art of storytelling, we will explore change in its many phases, in its glory and in its chaos. And together we will identify the missing pieces in our own lives that may be holding us back, so we may all take our flight of rebirth and reclaim our freedom. The next time we hesitate to respond to positive change knocking at our doors, remember that only 5% of the ocean has been explored. What if only 5% of your potential has been reached? If you open that door, imagine how much you'll learn and grow when you tap into that other 95%.